Welcome to 20% Time, a podcast from the team at Titan, a web development consultancy that specializes in Laravel, Vue, React, Livewire, all kinds of stuff. My name is Dave Hicking, and I'm here once again with my amazing co-host, Susanna. Susanna, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been a little while since we recorded. Everybody wants to know the weather update on our recordings. This is a very important part of the pre-show. It has turned cold here in Connecticut, I'm sad to say.
It's cold.
Yeah. First dusting of snow. You know, we're at the part of the year where you're, remotely starting your car. And no, I don't. No, it's all good. And things are going well with you.
It's freezing. It's cold. It's miserable. It's England. You know, what can I say?
It's England.
I mean, we've had good weather for a long time, or for the large part of the year, we've had really good weather. So I can't really complain. It's like the end of November and it finally turned cold. So it is what it is. Back to the standard British weather.
Speaking of coming in from the cold, I can only imagine that our guest today has already experienced the brunt of, I don't know, it's like I know we're still in fall, but I feel like for parts of the northern United States, I just call it pre-winter. Like, I don't know what else to call it. Today we are joined by our very special guest, Ben Holmen. Ben, I want to make sure I get your title right. You are the CTO of the Boutique Hub, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Excellent. That's a good to know, considering Ben was a client of ours for about a year and a half. You'd think I would know his official title.
I think you may have known that already, Dave.
Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I am happy to be here hanging out with you two.
Excellent. And to join in with the weather report, Ben, is the weather also cold where you're at?
Yeah. So we had a wonderful fall, and it ran late, which was great. And now we have tripped and fallen directly into winter, and it's feeling cold and snowy and dark. So we're in it now.
My father-in-law is currently in the woods in southwestern Wisconsin, deer hunting with his relatives. So I'm sure he came at just the right time of year when it is very cold.
Oh, perfect. That's good deer hunting weather.
There you go. Yeah. I'm just excited because he's coming back with cheese curds when he returns. I'm picking up at the airport Tuesday night, and I'm just going to be like, hand over the cheese curds, Ed.
Cheese curds. I was just thinking,
sticks.
Oh, yeah, venison sticks, of course. Yeah. Just Susanna's like, cheese curds. What
is that? Well, tell me. I don't know.
This is now a different topic. I think we should go over the cheese curd situation in Wisconsin.
You should know by now. Whenever we talk, we never stay on topic. So tell me about cheese curds, please, before we move on to all about deer hunting. And I don't know what else.
Suddenly, this is a really Wisconsin podcast, I guess.
This is great.
So, cheese curds. Wisconsin is famous for, I'll say it, having the best cheese around.
Wow.
And particularly cheese curds, which are typically mozzarella or cheddar. And they're small little nuggets, like bite-sized nuggets. But they're not like cubes of cheese. They're not sliced off a larger block. They are created in this nugget shape. And typically, you want to eat them very fresh, particularly mozzarella curds. And you'll want to eat them maybe the same day they were created. And they're squeaky and delicious. And
I don't like squeaky cheese.
The Wisconsinites love the squeak. Ben, do you prefer your curds at room temperature?
Yeah, that's very, You know your curds, Dave. They're squeakier at room temperature.
It's almost like I'm married into a family from Wisconsin.
And then the best part is
squeaky.
Okay, I have a solution for you. The best part about curds is you can deep fry them.
Yes.
If you do it properly, then you have this molten cheese, almost like a fondue wrapped in breading and deep fried. And it's so delicious, and it will make you regret every curd you ate.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult to stop, but they're really delicious.
Oh, no, we do fried cheese. Fried cheese. I mean, what you're describing to me, do you know Baby Bell? Have you got Baby Bell in the US?
Yeah, we've got Baby
It's like, the first time I came, okay, I'm going to say it, embarrassing story. But anyway, when I came to the UK, I didn't know anything about many things. And I didn't know about Baby Bells. So all I knew was cheese. And it's in this waxy red cover thing.
Right.
I thought you're supposed to eat it all, so I ate it all. And it was a while until people told me you're supposed to peel it and you only eat the cheese inside. So that's my Baby Bell story.
That's wrapped in wax, right? Like a red wax.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Red. I just thought, because some cheeses are of different colors. I thought this is what it's supposed to look like. So I ate it all. and it was, I mean, edible. I'm still here, so
I'm glad you made it.
Yeah. But yeah, cheese. I like cheese, but it cannot be squeaky. And we do fried cheese. We do fried cheese in Czech. It's quite popular actually. But we fry, how do you say it? Edam cheese? EDAM? Maybe it's like European kind of cheese. I don't know. Like a slice, thick, maybe 1 centimeter, thick slice of cheese, and then you also cover it in this breadcrumbs, egg, and stuff, and fry it. So that's quite typical Czech dish, fried cheese.
Is it like a cube? A 1 centimeter cube?
No,
like
it's much
a big
bigger.
Slice.
Well, not that big. I mean, if people saw, I don't know. It's about, I don't know, that big.
Gigantic slice of cheese. So your ratios are different. So, okay, I got it.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. I mean, I will definitely try your cheese skirt and see if it's any special. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But
next time you're in the States, we'll get some curds for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna add it to my ever-growing list of things I need to try in the US. Cheese skirts on the list. Okay.
I was gonna get into a whole side topic about should we just take her to Culver's, but that's a whole other conversation instead.
Yeah.
Take me where?
Oh man, you just brought me right to the top of that rabbit hole and left me, Dave.
But instead, we have Ben on the show not to talk about cheese curds, although that could be, like Ben said, that could really be a spin-off podcast for Titan, where we introduce Susanna to different interesting American delicacies. Ben, we want to have you on the show today because, first of all, yes, we worked with you for a long time, but also I wanted to kind of ask you some questions about kind of like your story and Boutique Hub's story and what it's like to build this pretty substantial product using Laravel and Livewire and all kinds of stuff like that. Just kind of dive in and talk about how things have been going, I guess. So can you start by telling us a bit about your background as a developer? How long have you been doing this? Yeah. How did you get into Laravel?
So my background goes back a bit. I started with PHP in 2005 and started with PHP 4, of course, and worked on client websites, like a local agency sort of situation. Yeah. And then I spent about 9 years as an internal developer for a continuing ed company, also writing PHP. And in that time, I had a little exposure to frameworks, but the culture at those two companies was not really into frameworks. It was more build it yourself sort of place. So I came out of that and had heard about Laravel and was looking for a reason to use it because, of course, the hype about Laravel, even a few years ago, was pretty high.
Yeah.
So I was looking for a reason to use it and came to my current job where I've been about 5 years. And we were doing a lot of like custom WordPress development, custom plugins, custom themes, gluing plugins together, that whole world, like making WordPress do weird and unnatural things. And then had this large project, the project we're talking about today, come up. And I knew like, this is absolutely my shot to build a large application in Laravel. This is it.
Yeah.
So I started learning it and did a couple small projects, started going through Laracasts and rebuilding an old project of mine where I was pretty familiar with the domain and could just reapply what I knew about the domain to the framework and start to learn how things are wired up. So I got into it kind of on my own and then knew I'd need some help to make this project happen because it is a gigantic project. So I knew I'd be hiring or contracting out, and I knew I would be looking for Laravel developers, and ended up talking to Dan and Keith and getting down that road. Hooked up with Titan.
It's amazing how many devs have in their sort of Laravel story. It involves some variation of the phrase, and then I started watching Laracasts.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was my my first introduction because, of course, you start Googling around for how do you learn and typical topics. You get through the docs and then Laracast is sitting right there. It's easy money to spend. It makes so much sense. So, I went through, I think at that point it was a Laravel 6 course. And built out, I think it's a Twitter clone or something like that. I'm sure many, many people listening to this podcast have watched that same series, the Laravel 6 from scratch series. So that was instrumental.
So right now you are the CTO for the Boutique Hub, and the project that we worked on, I don't know if you externally call it this, but we called it Hubventory. Can you For folks who don't know, who've never heard of the Boutique Hub, what exactly is it, and what was the sort of big Laravel application that you just talked about? What was that?
Yeah.
What was the idea?
So I'll start with the Boutique Hub. That's the original business. That's been around for, I want to say, about 7 years. And I started helping them as a contractor to build out basically a membership platform because the Boutique Hub is a community. It's a community now of about 7,000 boutique owners.
Wow.
So you can think of like one of our typical members would be the owner of a women's apparel boutique in a small town or downtown Dallas, or an online boutique, just really running the spectrum of different small apparel shops mostly. And we provide lots of resources for them to help them grow their business. We help them like learn how to keep their books and how to do marketing on Facebook and how to overcome common obstacles and provide camaraderie for those small business owners, because they might be the only boutique owner in their town.
Sure.
So an online community is really important for them, and being able to talk to people who understand the challenges of their day-to-day work life. So that's the bulk of the Boutique Hub. But we also have this idea, and we have these members who sell products to boutique owners. So every boutique has to buy their apparel, their accessories, their jewelry from someone, and they buy them from wholesalers. And increasingly, that's happening online.
Yeah.
Historically, it would happen in person, which still happens, but more and more it's happening online. And so that was an opportunity for us to start building a marketplace to do the commerce between, or facilitate the commerce between those brands that we work with and have built trusted relationships with, and the boutiques who we work with and have trusted relationships with. So we're bringing all this community into basically a third-party wholesale platform, and facilitating that in unique ways that are beneficial to our particular members. And we're able to respond to their needs. We're able to work with our community to say, what do you need? How could we do better? What can we make easier for you? And then build it out, which is pretty unique. So if you think about like an Etsy or an eBay, it's a third party where a seller will have a shop and products in that shop, but you can purchase from many sellers at the same time. That's essentially what we're doing at Hubventory.
Yeah.
Just specialized for boutique buyers and wholesale, like apparel or jewelry or candle sellers.
Is there community mainly in North America, or are you international?
We are international, but largely North America. I think we're probably about 90 to 95% in North America.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, like, hearing you describe it, like, it's funny because we were on this project from sort of, early stages and worked along with you, but hearing you describe it, it's like, yeah, that's actually a really big thing to build. Were you,
it's huge.
Going into it, were you sort of like, were you intimidated by the size of what you wanted to build?
Yeah, I was, to be perfectly frank.
Sure. I mean, I would hope so, almost.
So we want to build an Etsy. Okay. And I'm currently the only developer on board that can build that. Okay.
No problem.
How do we start?
One Etsy. You're going to hit the Etsy button. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, my first reaction was like, what has already been built that can do this?
Yeah.
I think every software developer needs to start there. Like, do we really need to build this? Like, does this have to be custom, or can we leverage something else? And it turns out for the specialty, or like the features we wanted to build, and the level of customization we needed, custom was the only way to go. But that's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
Like, we're competing against, or like the other brands in our space have large development teams, dozens of developers and lots of venture capital money behind them. And we're a relatively scrappy company. My company is about 25 employees. And so we're kind of an underdog, trying to do it and bootstrapping it ourselves. So coming into that project, having like a technical left turn for me, and then also just a lot of uncertainty of like, how hard is it actually to build something like that? Like, sure, I've done e-commerce. I know how to wire up Stripe. I can understand like the rough shape of this thing, but I know it's going to be a huge project. And there are so many things that we haven't even considered at this point, like at the outset of the project, that we'll have to figure out as we go. So I I couldn't have told you how long it would take at the beginning of that project because we just didn't know what it was. We were building a wholesale marketplace. Roughly speaking, sellers sell to buyers. We move the money around. We take a little commission. We'll make it easy for boutiques. That was the spec. And so through
it's a good spec.
Following, yeah, how long will that take?
Simple.
Yeah, all we got to do. So yeah, that was an undertaking, and I knew I'd have to grow a lot. I'd have to learn a lot of new things.
Yeah.
And I knew there'd be a lot of challenges for me. But that's intimidating, but also exciting. To be put in a position as a developer where you get to build something, first of all, totally greenfield from scratch. You get to choose your tech stack. You get to learn your tech stack, and you get to hire people to help you do it. There are a lot of challenges in that, but that is a rare opportunity. And so I felt and continue to feel very fortunate that I had that opportunity to build a project of this size, and was empowered to invest in people and invest in time to actually build the thing.
So you mentioned tech stack. So you said you come from PHP background, you wanted to do a Laravel thing. What about the rest of the tech that you use on Boutique Hub? I know you use, aside from Laravel, you're using Livewire and Inertia. How did you decide what you wanted to use?
Good question. We were using the tall stack. So Laravel, Alpine, Tailwind, and Livewire. That's our primary stack, I would say. Just as a short side note, we use Inertia and React to run a Shopify app that's connected with our platform. And so we have that in our monolith, but kind of tucked away on the side. And Inertia is fantastic. I'm looking forward to an excuse to use it throughout an entire application. Right now, it's just handling a few routes there. But the bulk of our project is server-side rendered with the tall stack, and that has turned out to be a great choice. I didn't know it at the outset if it was the right choice. I arrived at that conclusion mostly by following the hype. I'll say it. I got really excited when I saw Caleb demo Livewire. I think it would have been the 2020 LyricCon. So I think he was demoing Livewire 2 at that point. And it just clicked for me that could really help solve a lot of common user interface problems. And I knew that I wasn't going to go for a full SPA. And so I was looking for what's a sensible way to do server-side rendered and then bulk up from there. And I chose to avoid the SPA because I can only learn so many things at one time. And I felt like that would be the payoff for taking that dive was going to be a little too much. So I wanted to limit in my comfort zone, but plus a little bit, if that makes sense. And the server-side rendered was right up my alley. And so once I found out about Livewire and what that could do for us, that made a lot of sense. And then, honestly, talking to Keith, so the beginning of my working relationship with Titan was technical advising with Keith. And if you aren't familiar with Keith, he's the man. He's fantastic.
We love Keith.
And he was so helpful to help me grow as a Laravel developer and modernize my skill set, but also to just suss out some basic infrastructure at the beginning of this. So I remember having conversations with Keith, I'm thinking about using this. How do you feel about it? Do you think it's ready for production? Could I use that? Am I going to be tripped up in the future? And he gave me the go-ahead. He thought it'd be the right choice to go ahead with Livewire at that point. And I'm really glad that it worked out, because it turns out once you start using Livewire in a project, you start with a little bit here, a little bit there. And we have ended up doing a lot of Livewire on this. It is all over our code base. So I owe a lot to Caleb for that particular project, because it's really enabled us to quickly build out more reactive interfaces without writing a lot of JavaScript and keeping a lot of things in our PHP.
So as time went on, you not only continued to work with Titan for a pretty extended period of time, but you also sort of decided to slowly build your own internal team. And then once those folks started coming online, we operated as one big team. Was that always the plan as you were thinking about hiring folks, or did it just kind of work out that way? Or because that's not always, like when we work with companies, sometimes it's like that, but oftentimes it's like they bring us in because they've got like a very specific thing they want to build or a specific aspect of a thing, and we kind of sometimes get handed these little like, oh, here's this little here's this little portion of this, or we're throwing this thing over to you, and ask a lot of questions, and So how did you get to that decision? I guess.
Yeah. So I mentioned Keith helping me level up and modernize my my skill set. I had felt like I was falling behind after, like, I'd been a PHP developer for 15 years at that point. And I was feeling like I was like not keeping up with the current trends in PHP and the most modern practices. And so one of the things I was looking for was a team that could help me grow first and then multiply their knowledge through my work and then the people I hired. But at the outset of the project, I didn't feel qualified to hire a Laravel developer because I didn't have enough experience on my own. So I didn't feel like I'd be able to assess their skill set or assess how they'd be able to help me out until I had more time working on the project. So at the beginning, I anticipated working with Titan for a period of time, learning, growing till I felt competent to do, to do my job. And then to hire an internal team. And what ended up happening is I worked with Titan for about 6 or 8 months, and I then started hiring internal developers. So we now have 2 other internal Laravel developers on my team, and continued to work with Titan. So we ended up with this like combined hybrid team.
Yeah.
And it's the best team I've ever worked at, frankly. Like, we had a ton of fun. We totally combined the teams. Weekly meetings involved everyone on the team. I encouraged my team to pair with individual Titan developers. I paired with Titan developers every week. And that growth and just like, we had a great time working together. It just totally clicked. So that part of it, like keeping them combined, just kind of evolved naturally. At that point, we had 3 Titan developers working on the project for months. And so it'd be weird to like wall them off as I bring on new people who were just learning the project. And so, frankly, to be able to say to my new hire, hey, I'll pair with you. I'll introduce the code, but you'll also pair with Nathan or Anthony to get up to speed in areas of the app that you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
That's a great way to level up people quickly and really speed up the onboarding process. So it really, really paid off. I would 100% do it that way again. It worked. And I have to give credit, I give credit to my team members for being open and being the right kind of people to do that.
For sure.
And give credit to all the Titan developers to be open and generous with their time and not feel protective of the code they'd written or protective of their time and not to be generous with it. So we just had a really positive vibe going with that whole team. And then Susanna came on at one point, and we had an even bigger team and even more pairing and even more fun. So we had a big team at one point. I think it would have been 6-7 developers plus Dave.
I did the least amount possible on this project. I never did commit that first PR, which is really unfortunate.
You never did.
Oh, but I bagged the 1,000. Was it the 1,000 PR? I think I got it. As soon as it was coming up to 1,000, I just created a draft PR, although I had nothing to put in it. I just wanted to have the 1,000. So I had like 1,000 draft PR, But you got to do what you've got to do. But when you mentioned pairing with...
We're up to, I think, 1,800 PRs now. I'm eyeing the 2,000 PR.
Oh, wow. That 2,000 is going to be that's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, make a draft one. I'm just telling you.
I think I'm going to make 200 draft PRs and then just claim every number between now and 2,000, maybe.
Just in case.
It's a pro move right there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that you paired with Titan devs, and this is for me. And when I joined the team, that was really unusual for me because I've never really had a client wanting to pair with me. So now I understand. Now hearing you talk about it, now I understand why you did it. That you were learning. Everyone was learning on the job pretty much. You were learning how things were. So that's why. Is it something that you Like in which way? So other than you learning more about the technology, did you find valuable in any other way? Like making this big team of your people, Titan people, other than the technology aspect of it. Okay, this is a hint. Our conversations, what we're talking about. Every time we pair together, it was hardly about code. It was mainly about what did we discuss other than weather.
Cheese curds.
Cheese curds.
Somehow cheese curds never came up. I don't understand it, but I'm glad we got there eventually. So I have to say, before this project, I didn't have a lot of pair programming experience. I had worked either as a solo developer or at a company where we did informal code review, but never really sitting down and coding together. And again, I had heard about pair programming. I knew it had its advantages, but I just had not practiced it much. And I had the chance to pair with Keith, like I mentioned. I'm not sure how many times, maybe a dozen times, Keith and I got together, and I'd make sure I had something I was stuck on or a question I had about how the framework is put together. And my goal to go into those meetings was to always come out with new knowledge or new experience that I could then run with. So at that point, that was very much help Ben learn this framework, help Ben learn how to put things together. But then I also had a chance to work with Matt on this project, which is kind of weird from a quirk of Titan scheduling. He was the lead on the project at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate. Like if you get a chance to pair with Matt, like, hang on, you're going to learn some things. And he goes 100 miles an hour. But that was also like, why wouldn't I take the chance to learn from someone so experienced who has deep knowledge of Laravel and development? So I, at the very beginning of the project, had a big jump start in the value of pairing for my benefit. And then I found, so I wanted to continue it. I learned so much from every developer on the project. I still learn things when I pair. Either we discover them together or someone has a different way of solving a problem that I hadn't thought about previously. So it's unusual if I come out of a pairing session without having a new perspective or something different that I wouldn't have considered before. And I also found it to be hugely helpful for sharing knowledge about the application. So a little bit about my role. I code as much as I can, which is most of the time not a lot. And I spend a lot of time as kind of a technical project manager, working with the non-technical staff to understand business problems, understand like marketing goals, understand what we're trying to accomplish, talking through new features and trying to outline them as best I can, and then translating that information back to our development team. And since I have the technical knowledge, I also like to sit and like work through the crux of the problems. So I know from the non-technical staff what they're trying to accomplish, and I know as a developer what's going to be the stickiest part of implementing that. And so I can structure my pairing sessions around, all right, I know you're going to be able to do like 80, 90% of this on your own, but there's going to be one tricky spot. Let's spend our time on that tricky spot, and you can work on the rest on your own. So you can bring two brains together to solve the hardest problem, and we can collaborate to figure out, based on what I know about the problem we're trying to solve for the user, what is the best technical solution that we can generate together. So I've found pairing to be so useful for growth, like technical growth, but also just to really speed up the communication of what we're building and how we should build it, so that it doesn't get to a pull request and then you're having feedback about how it's built. You can get a lot earlier in that process and collaborate on how to build it out.
I got a two-part question for you because I always love long, complicated questions. That's really more two sides of the same coin. Was there anything in particular from an architectural or process point of view that, in retrospect, you wish you had gotten to or done earlier in the process of building Hubventory? And then conversely, is there anything you look back on now and go, I'm so glad we made that choice early because it was the right choice?
This is, I would rather give you more answers for the first one.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
The more humble, but I don't have that many where I felt like we got in a corner that we couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
I had the advantage of knowing this would be a large project from the get-go. And so, like, architecturally, we built it to scale from the beginning, which is not how I'd recommend every project should be built. But we rely heavily on queues. We already split off our database server, our cache server, our Mealy search server. They're all ready to be split off into individual servers if we even need to get to that point. We have multiple queue workers, multiple web servers, load balancers. So our server infrastructure is already scaled. We built it so that adding a third web server or a third queue worker is no problem whatsoever. So we have the advantage of knowing it'd be large. One fantastic decision was Matt recommended putting Marcy on the project. And at the beginning, I didn't have an idea of how I was going to build out the front end, which is not really my strength, but I can do it. It's just painful and the results aren't what they could be. I'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
So
we all
Matt
have strengths.
I've got someone who you should totally hire. And he did a hard sell. He said, like, you need to get Marcy on this project. You do not have time to do this. And I'm glad he did. He was assertive about it, and he was right. Because we kept Marcy busy for like a year and a half continuously. And there were times where, so I was always in the role of saying, like, how much longer do we need to contract with Titan?
Right.
When are we going to get to certain milestones so we can open up to more of the public, et cetera? So I was always looking at my task list saying, like, how many more weeks do I need of back-end development? How many more weeks do I need for front-end development? And Marcy's queue would trickle down and then fill right back up again over and over and over. So I'm so thankful that Marcy was on the project from a technical perspective. And you both know Marcy is an absolute gem of a human. She was fantastic just for the overall good times on the project.
Yes.
She just brings some light and humor that's uncommon.
Well,
go ahead.
go on.
No, go ahead.
No,
I was going to crack
because we had the second question,
Yeah,
don't we? Come on, we're not going to let you off the hook.
The part where, like, we got into a pickle and couldn't get out.
Yeah, anything comes to mind?
No, I'm going to punt that back to you. What do you know?
I'll ask about this, and if you want me to cut this because you don't want to offend any partners, go ahead. Shopify was complicated to integrate with, right?
Yeah.
Is there any aspect of that where you're like, either we should have done that earlier, we should have done that differently, we should have done whatever? Do you regret or have sort of maybe some retrospective thoughts about that?
Oh, yeah. Okay, Dave, I knew I could count on you.
Yeah.
See, this is why I sat in a meeting with you for weeks and weeks.
That's the only reason. Yeah.
You know all the challenges we face. So Shopify is a major e-commerce platform that runs most online boutiques, I'll say, and many other online commerce. They're the big player in the space. So one of the features we wanted to build was if a wholesale brand has a Shopify account with thousands of products in it, instead of making them import a CSV file or enter them manually, why don't we just connect the Shopify app and import their products automatically, which is fantastic for the brands. And I totally underestimated how much work that was going to be. So I had experience building one other Shopify app in the past, and it was a lot easier at that time. The type of app we had to create for Hubventory, the type of Shopify app, required a lot more of a user interface. And I thought, great, we'll just reuse what we're doing here. We'll create a few extra routes, server-side render this thing. It's working great.
Boom.
And yeah, we got slapped down real hard by the Shopify app review process. And we also had a lot of go-arounds with them about their fee structure and some gray areas about, are we exempt from that? Do we need to run payments through Shopify or not? And it wasn't clear from their documentation and wasn't clear from our first few rounds of communication with their customer service team. So that ended up being a lot more work and tied up a lot of development time, because what you have to do, like I alluded to earlier, you need to build a React app. And I really didn't want to bring in React unless it was necessary. And then it became necessary. And you have to use a lot of their components because they want all the apps in the Shopify App Store to look and function in similar ways. So there's good reason behind it. It just means if you're building a Shopify app, you really need to bite the bullet at the beginning. And that would have saved some pain. It ended up being that app review process was pretty stressful for me because it was a pretty critical feature for our users. That makes a big difference in how easy our platform is. And it was wildly out of my control how long it would take to get through that app review process. So good call, Dave. That is absolutely something I got wrong at the beginning.
One thing that was always interesting about sort of observing as this is going along and hearing all the updates from our devs and hearing updates from you is when people talk about app stores, right? They always talk about like the Apple App Store, or the Google App Store, or something like that. And it's like, yeah, but you never hear people go, yeah, let me tell you about the Shopify App Store. But it's,
Yeah, I'm not sure how many apps there are in the Shopify App Store. I would guess it's in the tens or hundreds of thousands.
There are quite a few, yeah.
I will say their API is fantastic. Any developer who's been around has seen a few different APIs, and you all know the good ones and the painful ones. And Shopify's got a good one. So we didn't really have any pain from that. Their webhook support's great. They're pretty easy to work with once you get all your ducks in a row, basically. But yeah,
and once they
apps, it can be a trip.
Once they wear you down and you realize, oh, I'm building a React app.
Before you know it, yeah.
I think our first rejection email from them so you submit and then you wait because they actually manually review the apps. And you can see some activity like, oh, some weird test shop domain installed my app. They must be working on it. But it takes about a week to find out. And that first email I got back had like 19 things that were wrong. And some of them are minor. Sure. Like most of them are minor. But there were absolutely a couple like, well, I don't know how we're going to do that problems that we had to get over.
Yeah.
And then the cycle is you just keep fixing and resubmitting. And you're hoping that you don't introduce any new regressions that they then catch in a future one. But I think we had to go through about 3 rounds of review to make it. And then, of course, everything's on a timeline. So if you don't respond or if you don't resubmit your app within a certain amount of time, then you go back on the queue. So you have to prioritize that and make sure you get it out of the door efficiently, even if you have to build a lot of new features. So Nathan Morgan built the React app for us, and he used Inertia on it, and it turned out great. There was just a big learning curve to climb for that.
Yeah, and that lack of real-time feedback about like, am I building this in a way that they're going to like at first? Right. I mean, I'm not a dev. I've worked with devs for a very long time now. One thing I learned early on is how important the sort of like feedback process is, right? Like the more you can get close to real-time feedback, the better. And in this case, it's like, I think it's okay, but I'm throwing this thing out there into the Shopify ether, and you're just hoping that they, you're like, at first, eventually as you get towards the end, you get a much better idea of what they're looking for. But at first you're like, I don't know, is this going to be okay?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like reading tea leaves when you read the documentation. It's like, I think this is what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I think we can do it this way, but I won't know until someone reviews it. And then it's so subjective too. So you might get one reviewer that, interprets those tea leaves a little differently than the next, and you're just hoping to get through. And we also, at the same time, we were working with Shopify. We were also pushing an app for the Boutique Hub, unrelated to Hubventory, but we were pushing a Boutique Hub app through the Apple and Android app stores at the same time. So we were just in a world of app store approval hurt. I'm really glad those approvals are all behind us. I have one more Shopify app to build. And I'll tell you what, I think it's going to go smoother this time because I'm just going to...
Famous last words. Oh, I can't wait to ask you in a few months' time. So how did that go, Ben? Tell us.
Well, I'll say, I think it's going to go better because I'm just going to use their bootstrapped React app skeleton from the get-go. So I learned that lesson. And then we're going to go from there. So at least they won't be able to ding me for that particular area of problems.
There'll be 18 others.
Yeah, you're right, Susanna. Wow,
no, I'm being too pessimistic.
I was feeling so positive and confident.
Oh, I'm such a killer of joy. I'm so sorry. I believe in you. I know you can do it.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. That's the worst part. So.
No. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. It's going to be great. You know Shopify inside out nowadays. You know, like you say, API is great. You know what to avoid, I guess. You can read the leaves better than you could a year ago. So, you know.
It won't require any payment, so I can just avoid that whole entire question altogether. That's good. All right, I'm feeling good again. Thank you. You brought it back.
I was going to say, Ben, you've got this.
You got it.
Or I should say, whichever of your devs is working on this, they've got it. I don't know.
No, that's going to be me this round.
Oh, that's you. Okay.
How is it?
My Nathan Morgan.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
You'll be good.
See, this is why you pair with Nathan, because I've seen some of this come together. I've reviewed all the PRs. I've got a lot more reference material for this particular app than we had for the last one. So that should give me a leg up.
Boost. Yeah, you'll be fine. So since you worked with Titan for over a year, is there something that you adopted during our time together that you will take with you into the future?
Absolutely. So I will just say that I straight up stole aspects of Titan culture, because I think that's one of the things that you all do a great job of. I also really leaned heavily on Keith and Dave and Matt when I was doing my hiring, like figuring out how should I go about hiring, how should I evaluate candidates, what should the process be. So straight up lifted that right out of the Titan, the Titan world. And so the kind of the composition and culture of my team, it was really easy to bootstrap that when I already had some existing team culture going on with the Titan developers, because it really is like the Titan developers felt like they were part of my team, like we were in it all together. It didn't feel like there was a big wall between the organizations. I felt like we were all in it together. And so it was really easy to have that hybrid culture at the beginning and then just morph it into like, well, this is how we do business at the Boutique Hub as well. So pull request culture, etiquette around that, pairing etiquette, just how we conduct ourselves in meetings, that all just naturally flowed right out of our relationship. And then, of course, all the knowledge that I was able to pick up from the early days, but also just like, Titan has a repository of knowledge and experience. And one of my favorite things that I miss now was being able to say, hey, can you guys ask around and see if anyone's run into X? Like what problem? I could hear like the internal Slack clicking away and worrying and then coming back with, okay, here's something, or here's what we found, or someone used this package or whatever. Yeah. Which is a fantastic, like, I don't know how hard you sell that feature of working with Titan, but it is a feature.
Maybe we should sell it harder. Yeah.
Maybe we should sell it.
Because I'll tell you what happens when that happens is I take that away, and then we have a couple different internal places where I might ask. And if I need to, I sort of poke Keith, or I think about like, what project have I worked on where we've done something like this, and I'll poke individual devs.
Who would know about it?
Right. We also have a tool that's internal to Titan called RAM that we built during kind of it was almost like a hackathon-ish sort of thing, which we don't really ever do. But we had during when our 2020 onsite got canceled due to COVID, we sort of did an internal, hey, let's all like just hang out together online and take some time away and try to do some team building. And we built the first sort of MVP of RAM, which is almost like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a Q&A. It's like a Wikipedia / Slack overflow-ish kind of a thing, but it's just like for Titan, like, oh, you can search, you can find stuff. Like I've even contributed to RAM. The only thing I've contributed is like,
look at you, Dave.
It's really just how to like use the command line to convert audio and video stuff into various bit rates, because that's the only thing I know how to do on the command line. But so I go in there and sometimes I'll be like, hey, have we ever done anything about this? Yeah, you're right. It's like this whirring machine behind the scenes, and then it just go, hi Ben, here's what we found.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Maybe you could sell that as a service, build a front end for it, just like, $50 a month, access to the Titan machine.
It's like a paid, curated, much nicer, like updated Ask Jeeves, right? It's like Ask Titan.
Yeah,
sort
exactly.
of to ask a question, it goes into this.
Oh, that sounds good.
Goes in this queue. Yeah.
Ask Titan.
We have an
I think you are onto something there.
We have a half-baked channel in Titan Slack where it's exactly for ideas like this. I might have to put the Ask Titan idea in there.
I think it should.
We'll see what happens.
We have an internal channel called Squirrel Rodeo where we just throw all the squirrels. An idea that's way out there.
Yeah.
That's going to totally derail us, but you have to put it somewhere. You have to talk about it somewhere.
Oh, that's interesting.
Goes in the rodeo, Squirrel Rodeo.
Well, we have Half-Baked, and then we have Unpopular Opinions, but Squirrel Rodeo is like sort of like it's a triangulation of those two kind of like, that's interesting. I like the idea of Squirrel Rodeo.
Yeah, that's where you throw up your like ideas for new business.
Yeah.
Like new directions or new features or new ideas that you're not sure if anyone's going to want it or if it's too out there.
But you have to get it out. You have to
Gotta get it out.
Yeah.
Yep. And the best thing is you can tell people this is a squirrel. Put it in the rodeo so you can keep the rest of your world on track.
I hope you have appropriate fun emojis to go along with this.
That's another thing I stole from Titan. The emoji, like, oh, I like that one. So the worst part about collaborating with another team on Slack is each team has their own custom emoji, but you can see them.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Marcy earlier. Yeah. Marcy, she is a virtuoso with the Slack emoji.
That's right.
And she has apparently the world's largest Slack emoji library at her fingertips. And so we would drop, just to keep things light and fun.
Sure.
Like it was very common to have playful emojis happening.
Right.
And I couldn't use them. That's the worst part. So it's like it's like the artwork behind the glass. You can't interact with it. You can just experience it, but you can't do it yourself. So I stole a few that I really needed to use.
Believe it or not, one of our half-baked ideas for because we always like to do something for Laracon. We did we did some games and stuff last time. Like we tried to do something. We've done typing tests in the past. Yeah. We had a half-baked idea to put together an emoji pack, but then we realized it's such an inside joke that for 20 people, they're like, yes.
Yeah.
Ben Holmen, you might be one of them. Yeah. Ben, we are coming to the end of the time that we have today. But before we go real quick, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you wanted to mention or talk about?
I just have to call out Anthony Clark because I think I've name checked every other developer on this project. And Anthony built a fantastic CSV import process. My God. So if you've ever had to say, let's just import some CSVs, we'll just let them import CSVs.
Yeah, sure.
How hard can it be?
How hard could it be?
Just get a package. And it is hard. It is it's very difficult, even using libraries to be able to accept CSVs of different like headers and mapping columns and mapping values to your internal table schema and everything you got going on, handling weird characters and huge files and processing them efficiently and giving good feedback about it. Anthony built that, and I just wanted to call him out for that because that has consistently been one of the bits of feedback we receive from our users, that our CSV import works great. So appreciate every single developer on this project, and so glad that I had a chance to work with them on it.
I can't tell you how many of our projects at some point it's like, okay, so we're importing CSVs and we need to build forms in some way. We got a form builder and we've got a CSV import export, and you're just oh my God, here we go again. Yeah. Well,
projects without boundaries. That's projects the issue without boundaries. Like they're just like super open-ended. We'll just make it flexible. How flexible? You can do whatever you want. It's easy.
It's easy. Yeah. I have an unwritten rule where I tell devs on projects I'm on, if I say things like just do that or how hard could it be or it's easy, feel free to just,
all we have to do
is this.
Yeah.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it. For folks who might want to know more about you, find you online, where can they go?
They can find me on Twitter at Ben Holmen. This might be a little time capsule of a podcast episode.
Yeah.
We'll see if that Twitter
handle
comes up.
Yeah, we might have to rush to get this out sooner rather than later, for sure.
Right. Under the wire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been an absolute joy to talk to both of you. Thank you for having me on.
It was great chatting with you again.
Okay.
We miss you. I think it's fair to say.
Okay. Yeah. No, Ben, we had a blast working with you. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate you being on the show. This is turning into a big love fest, which I'm sure everybody wants to hear.
Love and cheese. What else do you want? Come on.
Love and cheese. They go together, hand in hand.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.